Okay, we're going to talk about IELTS. It's a name that many people know, but not many people know too much about it. So what we're going to do is just give you a bit more background about IELTS. It stands for International English Language Testing System, and it's the largest English language test available in the world, and it's used for entry to higher or further education. It's also used by professional organisations and employers to get an idea of what is the proficiency level in English of people who are applying for jobs. In some countries, such as Australia and New Zealand, it's also used for migration purposes. Now, the important thing to understand about IELTS is that there are two types of tests. There's the academic test of IELTS and there's the general training test of IELTS, and they are for different purposes. The academic module or test is for people who are applying for further study or for professional recognition to practice as nurses or doctors or dentists or radiographers or engineers. And the general training module is used for people who are applying for permanent residency or migration to countries like Australia and New Zealand. The features of the IELTS test is that there are 4 different sections. It tests proficiency in 4 skill areas: speaking, listening, reading, and writing. The difference between the academic and the general training module is that the reading and the writing sections are more difficult or more extensive in the academic module. So it's harder to do well in that particular part of the IELTS test. Preparing for the IELTS test is, of course, something that many students ask, how can I prepare for the IELTS test? Well, you can buy books about the IELTS test, but increasingly students are looking at ways where they can access the internet and assistance in internet courses in IELTS preparation. So remembering that you have to improve your skills in the 4 areas of speaking, listening, reading and writing, you need to give equal attention to each of those skill areas, remembering that individual students will have their own particular strengths and weaknesses. So you need to assess where your strengths are, where your weaknesses lie, and make sure that you focus on developing your skills in those areas so that you are ready for the test. Now, it's important to know what the format of the test is like. So what is it like to undertake each of those sections of reading, writing, speaking and listening, and to prepare for it by doing some mock IELTS tests or IELTS preparation tests so that you are not surprised on the day by the format of the test, the type of questions that are asked in speaking, the type of tasks that you are required to do in reading and writing, and also to look at as many different ways as possible of exposing yourself to spoken English in your country where you live. So if you have access to the internet, if you have access to television, if you're able to look at movies that are in English, so looking at many different ways as possible for you to try and create an English-speaking environment in your own country. Now, one of the interesting areas for improving English language is if you were to look, for example, at the website for Australia Network, which is the Australian television network and website, which is www.australianetwork.com. They have a special section there on Study English, and within Study English they have IELTS preparation program, and that is hosted on the website, available on the television from India to Japan down to Indonesia through various satellite and cable providers, and the hosting of materials on the website, and in some cases the availability of materials through bookshops in those countries. Australia Network is a major international platform for English language learning, but there are many smaller and individual online tutorial services available for IELTS preparation. One in particular that I know of, and I know is of high quality, is EnglishForToday.com. The IELTS examination was introduced onto the world scene in, I think, 1986-87, and I think the first tests were held in 1989. So the test has been operational now for almost 20 years, and it was developed by the British Council in partnership with the University of Cambridge Local Examination Syndicate, UCLES, and IDP Education Australia. And through those centres run by the British Council and IDP all over the world, it's possible to sit for the IELTS test. So you should go to the website of IELTS, and then you will find a list of different countries, and virtually every country in the world will have an IELTS testing centre. And in some cases they'll have multiple locations that will be close to where you live, so that you can sit for the IELTS test in the city where you live in your country, or you can travel to that city for the test. You'll have to pay in excess of $130 to sit for the test, but from your test score you have huge opportunities to pursue your studies internationally, to apply for international permanent residency in a migration receiving country, or take your IELTS score to a potential employer and show them that you have achieved a proficiency rating on the International English Language Testing System IELTS test. For entry to universities, the requirement is usually 6.5 IELTS with a minimum of 6 in writing. Now, in some cases, there's a requirement as high as 7 for people who are looking for professional registration, for example, to be a nurse in Australia, a doctor, a dentist, a radiographer, or an engineer. There's a requirement for professional registration.